Oliver stood at the pinnacle of his life, a place he had worked tirelessly to reach. As a highly respected neurosurgeon, he had carved out a niche for himself in the competitive world of medicine. His skill in the operating room was unmatched, his patients trusted him implicitly, and his colleagues often sought his advice on complex cases. Outside of work, he was equally successful. His marriage to Clara was the envy of their friends and neighbors. They had a beautiful home in a quiet, upscale neighborhood, and their young son brought joy and laughter into their lives daily. Oliver and Clara often hosted gatherings, their home filled with warmth and the sound of laughter. To the outside world, Oliver had it all: a thriving career, a loving family, and a seemingly perfect life. It was during a medical conference that Oliver met Kyle. She was the editor-in-chief of a prominent medical journal and had approached him about contributing an article on a groundbreaking surgery he had recently performed. Their initial meeting was professional, filled with discussions about advancements in neurosurgery and the importance of medical research. But as the evening wore on and the conversation shifted to more personal topics, a connection formed. Kyle was intelligent, articulate, and had a sharp wit that Oliver found captivating. Their professional rapport quickly turned into flirtation, and by the end of the conference, Oliver found himself inexplicably drawn to her. It wasn't long before their conversations moved from email exchanges about article drafts to late-night phone calls filled with shared stories and laughter. One weekend, when Clara and their son were away visiting family, Oliver and Kyle's relationship took a turn. They spent the weekend together, lost in the excitement and novelty of their affair. It was passionate and thrilling, a stark contrast to the stability and routine of his marriage. Oliver knew it was wrong, but he rationalized his actions by telling himself it was just a fling, a temporary escape from his demanding life. Kyle, however, saw it differently. She believed there was a deeper connection between them, something special that went beyond a mere physical attraction. She began to imagine a future with Oliver, one where they could be together without hiding in the shadows. After the weekend ended, Oliver felt a pang of guilt. He loved Clara and their son deeply, and the thought of hurting them weighed heavily on his mind. He decided to end things with Kyle, hoping to put the affair behind him and move on. But Kyle did not take the news well. She was hurt and confused, unable to understand how Oliver could dismiss what they had shared so easily. Her messages became more frequent and insistent, oscillating between pleas for another chance and anger over his rejection. Oliver tried to explain that it was a mistake, that he was committed to his family, but Kyle refused to accept his decision. Kyle's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She began showing up at Oliver's workplace unannounced, causing scenes that drew the attention of his colleagues. She would wait for him outside the hospital, follow him to his car, and bombard him with calls and texts at all hours. Oliver's attempts to distance himself only seemed to fuel her obsession. Kyle started to threaten to reveal their affair to Clara, using it as leverage to force Oliver into seeing her again. The stress of the situation began to take a toll on Oliver. He found it difficult to concentrate at work, his once steady hands now trembling with anxiety. He was constantly looking over his shoulder, fearing Kyle's next move. As the situation escalated, Kyle's actions became more invasive. She managed to obtain Oliver's home address and began leaving notes and gifts on his doorstep. Clara started to notice the strain on her husband, his once calm demeanor replaced by a constant state of agitation. When Clara confronted Oliver, he initially tried to downplay the situation, attributing his stress to the demands of his job. But the evidence was mounting, and Clara's suspicions grew. One evening, after yet another argument about his distant behavior, Oliver broke down and confessed to the affair. The revelation shattered Clara. She felt a mixture of betrayal, anger, and hurt. The foundation of trust their marriage was built on had been severely cracked. Clara's initial reaction was to leave, to take their son and get away from the pain. But after some time apart, she agreed to try counseling, recognizing that despite the betrayal, she still loved Oliver. They began attending therapy sessions, working through the layers of hurt and resentment. Meanwhile, Oliver took steps to protect his family from Kyle's harassment. He sought legal advice and was granted a restraining order. But Kyle, undeterred by legal boundaries, continued her pursuit. She would find ways to circumvent the restraining order, showing up in places Oliver least expected, always watching, always waiting. At the hospital, rumors about Oliver's personal life began to circulate. His once sterling reputation was now under scrutiny. Colleagues who once looked up to him with admiration now whispered behind his back. The stress of the ongoing harassment and the strain on his marriage affected his performance at work. He made mistakes, small ones at first, but enough to raise concerns among his peers. Oliver's superior called him into a meeting to discuss his declining performance and the rumors surrounding his personal life. It was a wake-up call for Oliver. He realized that if he didn't find a way to resolve the situation, he stood to lose everything he had worked so hard for. Desperation drove Oliver to take more drastic measures. He hired a private investigator to gather evidence of Kyle's harassment, hoping to strengthen his case for a more stringent legal response. The investigator uncovered disturbing details about Kyle's past, patterns of obsessive behavior, and previous instances where she had stalked other men. Armed with this new information, Oliver's legal team managed to secure a more restrictive restraining order, and Kyle was warned that any further violation would result in severe consequences. However, Kyle's obsession had reached a point where rationality no longer played a part in her actions. She continued to defy the court orders, finding new and creative ways to insert herself into Oliver's life. One day, Oliver found a note on his car, a chilling reminder of Kyle's refusal to let go. The note detailed his daily routine, mentioning places he had been with Clara and their son. The level of detail was unnerving. It was clear that Kyle was watching them closely. Fearful for his family's safety, Oliver decided to move them to a new house, hoping a change of location would offer some respite from Kyle's relentless pursuit. The move was stressful but necessary. Clara, though still hurt and distrustful, supported the decision. She wanted to believe that Oliver was doing everything in his power to protect them. Despite the move, Kyle managed to track them down. Her methods became more desperate and her behavior more unpredictable. She vandalized Oliver's new home, leaving threatening messages and damaging property. Clara and their son were living in constant fear, the sanctuary of their home now tainted by the shadow of Kyle's obsession. The police were called multiple times, but each encounter only seemed to escalate the situation. Kyle's mental state was deteriorating rapidly, and it was clear to everyone involved that she was a danger not only to Oliver and his family, but to herself as well. In a final bid to end the nightmare, Oliver arranged a meeting with Kyle in a public place, hoping to reason with her one last time. He chose a busy cafe, thinking the presence of other people would keep the situation from spiraling out of control. As he waited for her, his mind raced with possible outcomes. He knew this was a risk, but he felt he had no other choice. When Kyle arrived, she looked disheveled and tired, a stark contrast to the confident, composed woman he had met months ago. Oliver tried to speak calmly, explaining once again that their relationship was over and that she needed to move on with her life. Kyle's response was emotional and erratic. She accused Oliver of using her, of ruining her life, and of being a coward. Her voice rose, attracting the attention of other patrons in the cafe. Oliver remained calm, repeating his plea for her to seek help and leave him and his family alone. The conversation reached a boiling point when Kyle pulled out a knife, threatening to end her life if Oliver didn't come back to her. The cafe erupted into chaos as people scrambled to get away from the unfolding scene. Oliver, his heart pounding, tried to talk her down, using every ounce of his medical training and emotional strength to de-escalate the situation. The police arrived just in time to prevent a tragedy. Kyle was restrained and taken into custody. This time, The court mandated a psychiatric evaluation, and Kyle was admitted to a mental health facility for treatment. Oliver, though relieved that the immediate threat was over, was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. Clara, witnessing the final confrontation, saw firsthand the extent of Kyle's instability. It gave her a new perspective on the situation, but it didn't erase the pain of betrayal. Oliver and Clara continued their therapy, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been broken. Oliver dedicated himself to proving his commitment to his family, making amends for his actions and working tirelessly to regain Clara's trust. The process was long and arduous, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt. Clara struggled with her feelings, torn between her love for Oliver and the hurt he had caused. Their son, too young to understand the complexities of the situation, sensed the tension and became more withdrawn. At work, Oliver faced the challenge of restoring his professional reputation. He threw himself into his work, determined to prove that he was still the competent and reliable surgeon his colleagues once knew. It took time, but gradually his performance improved, and the rumors began to die down. Oliver's superior, recognizing his efforts, offered support and guidance, helping him navigate the difficult path back to professional stability. The ordeal left lasting scars on everyone involved. Oliver's actions had set off a chain of events that brought pain and suffering to those he loved. But in the end, he emerged with a deeper understanding of his own flaws and a renewed sense of purpose. The experience taught him the value of honesty and the importance of maintaining the trust of those who depend on him. Clara, too, grew from the experience, learning to set boundaries and prioritize her own well-being in the relationship. Their marriage, once on the brink of collapse, slowly healed. The trust they rebuilt was fragile but genuine, and they both worked hard to nurture it. Their son, sensing the renewed harmony between his parents, began to open up again, his laughter returning to fill their home. The road to recovery was long, but Oliver and Clara walked it together, stronger and more united than before. In the end, Oliver's story is a cautionary tale about the far-reaching consequences of infidelity and the complexities of human relationships. It highlights the importance of integrity and the devastating impact that a single moment of weakness can have on multiple lives. Through pain and perseverance, Oliver and Clara found a way to rebuild their lives, proving that even the deepest wounds can heal with time and effort. Kyle's inability to accept the end of her affair with Oliver quickly turned into a frightening obsession. Her behavior became more erratic and invasive, leading Oliver to live in a state of constant anxiety. She started sending him gifts and letters, each one more disturbing than the last. The tone of her messages shifted dramatically, from pleading and apologetic to angry and threatening. Her obsessive behavior didn't stop at texts and calls. She began following him, showing up uninvited at places he frequented. The sense of being watched at all times took a heavy toll on Oliver's mental health. He felt trapped, his every move shadowed by Kyle's relentless pursuit. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, Oliver returned home to find a bouquet of flowers on his doorstep with a note from Kyle. The note expressed her undying love and hinted at dire consequences if he continued to ignore her. Alarmed, Oliver immediately called the police, but their response was limited. The officers advised him to document everything and seek a restraining order, but Oliver knew that this legal barrier would do little to deter Kyle's obsessive tendencies. He feared for his safety and that of his family. The once peaceful sanctuary of his home had become a fortress besieged by fear and paranoia. As Kyle's harassment intensified, she began to target Oliver's family. Clara received anonymous messages, insinuating that Oliver was hiding something from her. At first, she dismissed them as malicious pranks, but as they became more frequent and detailed, her suspicion grew. The messages hinted at Oliver's affair with Kyle, something Clara had been unaware of until that point. When Clara confronted Oliver, he was forced to come clean about the affair. Her devastation was profound. her trust in him shattered. The revelation turned their home into a battlefield of accusations and tears. The strain on Oliver and Clara's marriage was palpable. Clara felt betrayed and humiliated, and Oliver was consumed with guilt and fear. Their son, sensing the tension, became withdrawn and anxious. Family life, once a source of joy, had turned into a daily struggle to maintain a facade of normalcy. Oliver knew that Kyle's obsession was the catalyst, but his own actions had set the stage for this unfolding tragedy. He sought legal protection for his family, but each step forward seemed to provoke a more extreme reaction from Kyle. She started showing up at their son's school, leaving notes for Oliver in his son's backpack. The intrusion into his child's life was the final straw for Oliver. Oliver decided to take a leave of absence from work to focus on protecting his family and dealing with Kyle's harassment. During this time, he installed security systems around their home, hired a private investigator to keep tabs on Kyle, and sought advice from legal and psychological professionals. The private investigator uncovered more about Kyle's background, revealing a history of similar obsessive behaviors with previous partners. This information was both alarming and somewhat relieving to Oliver. It showed a pattern, but it also highlighted the serious risk she posed. Oliver used this evidence to strengthen his case for a more stringent restraining order, but the legal process was slow and frustrating. As Kyle's obsession grew more intense, the impact on Oliver's family became increasingly severe. Clara, initially shocked and hurt by the revelation of the affair, struggled to cope with the relentless harassment. The continuous threats and the constant sense of danger affected her mental health. She developed anxiety and found it difficult to sleep, constantly fearing what Kyle might do next. Clara's relationship with Oliver, already strained by the affair, suffered further. She found it hard to reconcile her love for him with the betrayal she felt. Their son, too young to understand the complexities of the situation, sensed the tension and became fearful and withdrawn. The once harmonious family life was disrupted by Kyle's actions. Clara insisted on attending therapy sessions, both individually and as a couple, in an attempt to salvage their marriage and regain some semblance of normalcy. During these sessions, Clara voiced her fears and anger, while Oliver expressed his deep regret and determination to make amends. The therapist helped them navigate their emotions, providing tools to communicate more effectively and support each other through this crisis. However, the shadow of Kyle's obsession loomed large over their efforts. Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and every ring of the phone or knock at the door sent a wave of panic through her. Oliver's son began to exhibit signs of distress. He had trouble concentrating at school, became easily agitated, and frequently asked if they were safe. The family sought the help of a child psychologist to assist him in coping with the situation. The psychologist worked with him to express his feelings and fears, helping him to understand that his parents were doing everything they could to protect him. These sessions provided some relief, but the underlying issue, Kyle's continued harassment, remained unresolved. Clara decided to take a break from her own career to focus on the safety and well-being of their son. This decision was not easy, as she had a successful career that she was passionate about, but the safety of her family took precedence. Oliver, meanwhile, felt a deep sense of responsibility and guilt. He knew that his actions had brought this turmoil into their lives, and he was determined to find a way to end it. He continued to work closely with their lawyer and the private investigator, gathering evidence and pushing for more decisive legal action against Kyle. The family's social life suffered as well. Friends and neighbors, once frequent visitors, began to distance themselves, either out of concern for their own safety or discomfort with the unfolding drama. Oliver and Clara became isolated, their support network shrinking as Kyle's harassment continued unabated. The isolation only added to their stress, making them feel even more vulnerable. They stopped attending social events and minimized outings, creating a self-imposed lockdown in an attempt to avoid Kyle. The tension between Oliver and Clara occasionally erupted into heated arguments. The stress of the situation magnified every minor disagreement, turning them into major conflicts. Despite their efforts in therapy, the strain of constant fear and anxiety was taking its toll. There were moments when Clara contemplated leaving, taking their son, and starting anew somewhere far away from the shadow of Kyle's obsession. Oliver, though understanding of her feelings, pleaded with her to stay, promising that he would find a way to end the nightmare they were living. Oliver's professional life, once a source of pride and fulfillment, began to unravel under the weight of Kyle's harassment. The rumors about his affair and the subsequent fallout spread through the hospital, casting a shadow over his once stellar reputation. Colleagues who once admired him now whispered behind his back, and his interactions with patients were tinged with awkwardness, as some of them had caught wind of the scandal. The constant stress and fear affected his performance. His concentration wavered, and he made errors that he would never have made under normal circumstances. The confidence that once defined him in the operating room was replaced by doubt and hesitation. The administration took notice of his declining performance and the negative attention the scandal was bringing to the hospital. Oliver was called into several meetings with his superiors, where he had to explain his side of the story and assure them that he was taking steps to resolve the situation. Despite his assurances, the hospital's management was concerned about the potential liability and the impact on their reputation. They suggested that he take an extended leave of absence to deal with his personal issues. This suggestion felt like a double-edged sword to Oliver. While he understood the need to focus on his family and resolve the situation with Kyle, stepping away from his career felt like a personal defeat. During his leave of absence, Oliver dedicated himself to fortifying the legal case against Kyle. He worked closely with his lawyer to ensure that every interaction, every threat, and every incident was meticulously documented. The private investigator continued to gather evidence, building a comprehensive dossier that portrayed Kyle's behavior in stark detail. They hoped that this overwhelming evidence would compel the court to take more decisive action. At the same time, Oliver remained in contact with his colleagues, hoping to keep some semblance of his professional life intact. He reviewed case files from home, offered consultations via video calls, and tried to stay updated on the latest developments in neurosurgery. The distance from his daily routine gave Oliver a chance to reflect on his actions and their consequences. He realized how his affair, driven by a moment of weakness, had spiraled out of control and threatened to destroy everything he held dear. He vowed to be more present for his family and to rebuild their trust. The therapy sessions with Clara continued, and though progress was slow, there were small signs of improvement. They began to communicate more openly, and Clara appreciated Oliver's genuine efforts to make amends. Despite these efforts, the professional damage was not easily undone. The extended absence meant that his patients had to be reassigned to other doctors, and some of his colleagues had to take on additional responsibilities to cover for him. This caused resentment among his peers, further isolating him within the professional community. Oliver knew that rebuilding his reputation would be a long and arduous process, but he was determined to prove himself once again. He began to think of ways to contribute to the medical field from behind the scenes, considering writing research papers and participating in virtual conferences to stay relevant. As the legal proceedings against Kyle dragged on, Oliver's frustration grew. Each court hearing was a reminder of the complexity of the legal system and the limitations of restraining orders. Kyle's ability to manipulate and exploit loopholes made it difficult to achieve a lasting resolution. The private investigator's findings painted a troubling picture of Kyle's psychological state, but mental health laws made it challenging to compel her to receive the treatment she clearly needed. Oliver's lawyer advised patience and persistence, but the emotional toll was becoming unbearable. Oliver's return to the hospital was met with mixed reactions. Some of his colleagues were supportive, recognizing the ordeal he had been through, while others remained skeptical and distant. The administration had implemented a performance review process to monitor his progress and ensure that his personal issues did not affect patient care. Oliver approached his return with a renewed sense of determination. He was more focused and meticulous, aware that he needed to rebuild trust and prove his competence. Over time, his performance improved, and he began to regain some of the respect he had lost. But the shadow of the past lingered, a constant reminder of the fragility of his position. The experience changed Oliver in profound ways. He became more empathetic towards his patients, understanding that personal struggles often lie beneath the surface of medical issues. He also developed a deeper appreciation for the support systems in place for healthcare professionals facing personal crises. The ordeal had taught him the importance of seeking help and relying on others, a lesson he was determined to share with his colleagues. He began advocating for better mental health support within the hospital, using his own experience as a case study to highlight the need for comprehensive care. Through his advocacy, Oliver found a new purpose. He collaborated with mental health professionals to develop workshops and support groups for healthcare workers, aiming to create a safer and more supportive environment. His efforts were met with positive feedback, and he slowly began to rebuild his professional network. The process of healing was ongoing, but Oliver felt a sense of fulfillment in helping others. This new focus brought a sense of closure, allowing him to move forward with a renewed sense of purpose and commitment to his family and profession. In a desperate attempt to reclaim his life, Oliver sought the counsel of experts in various fields. He contacted lawyers, psychologists, and security specialists, hoping to find a strategy that would end Kyle's relentless pursuit. The first step was to enhance the security measures around his home. Oliver hired a security company to install a comprehensive system that included cameras, alarms, and reinforced locks. These physical barriers offered a semblance of safety, but the psychological impact of Kyle's obsession was far harder to mitigate. Oliver's lawyer advised him to file for a more restrictive restraining order. The existing order had proven ineffective, as Kyle continually found ways to breach it. They gathered all the evidence they could, text messages, emails, and testimonies from witnesses, to present a compelling case in court. Meanwhile, Oliver and Clara continued their therapy sessions, both individually and together, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. The therapist helped them develop coping mechanisms and communication strategies, but the constant threat of Kyle's interference made progress slow and arduous. Despite their best efforts, Kyle's harassment persisted. She would park her car near their house, watching them for hours on end. The sight of her vehicle became a trigger for anxiety and fear. Oliver installed blackout curtains to prevent her from peering into their home, but the knowledge that she was out there, watching, was a constant source of stress. Clara, in particular, struggled with the intrusion into their private lives. She felt violated and vulnerable, her home no longer a safe haven. To combat this, Oliver decided to take a more proactive approach. He hired a private investigator to follow Kyle, gathering more evidence of her harassment and any violations of the restraining order. The investigator uncovered disturbing details about Kyle's past relationships, all marked by similar patterns of obsessive behavior. This information, while unsettling, provided a clearer picture of the danger Kyle posed. Oliver's lawyer used these findings to push for a court-mandated psychiatric evaluation, arguing that Kyle's behavior was indicative of severe mental health issues. The court proceedings were tense and emotionally draining. Kyle's lawyer argued that her actions were driven by emotional distress, painting her as a victim of Oliver's deceit. Oliver, however, stood firm, presenting the extensive documentation of Kyle's harassment and the impact it had on his family. The judge, recognizing the severity of the situation, granted a more restrictive restraining order and mandated that Kyle undergo psychiatric evaluation and treatment. This decision brought a glimmer of hope to Oliver and Clara, but they knew it was not an immediate solution. The weeks following the court ruling were a mix of cautious optimism and lingering fear. Oliver and Clara hoped that the mandated treatment would help Kyle gain the help she needed and bring an end to their ordeal. However, Kyle's reaction to the court order was anything but compliant. She saw the ruling as a betrayal, and her behavior became even more erratic. One afternoon, while Clara was out running errands, Kyle attempted to break into their home. The alarm system was triggered, and the police arrived just in time to prevent her from causing any harm. She was arrested and taken into custody, but the incident left Clara deeply shaken. The breaking point came when Kyle managed to post bail. Her release from custody reignited the fear that had only just begun to subside. Oliver knew that a final confrontation was inevitable. He arranged a meeting with Kyle, choosing a public park where they could talk without the immediate threat of violence. He hoped that in a public setting, with witnesses around, Kyle would be less likely to act out. When he arrived at the park, he saw Kyle sitting on a bench, her expression a mixture of anger and desperation. Oliver approached her cautiously, maintaining a safe distance. He spoke calmly, reiterating that their relationship was over and that she needed to seek help to move on with her life. Kyle, however, was beyond reasoning. She accused him of ruining her life, of leading her on and then abandoning her. Her voice grew louder, attracting the attention of passers-by. Oliver remained composed, trying to de-escalate the situation. He explained that the court's decision was for her own good, that she needed professional help to overcome her obsession. Kyle's response was to pull out a small vial from her bag, threatening to take her own life if Oliver didn't agree to be with her. The sight of the vial filled Oliver with dread. He pleaded with her to put it away, to think about the people who cared about her and the future she still had. The tension was palpable, the air thick with the potential for tragedy. As Oliver continued to speak, trying to reach through the haze of her obsession, the police, alerted by concerned onlookers, arrived at the scene. They managed to subdue Kyle and take her into custody once again. This time the court took a more decisive stance. Kyle was ordered to undergo intensive psychiatric treatment at a secure facility. The intervention of the authorities provided a much-needed sense of relief for Oliver and his family. Knowing that Kyle was finally receiving the help she needed and that they were safe from her immediate threats allowed them to start the healing process in earnest. Clara, though still scarred by the experiences, found solace in the fact that their nightmare was coming to an end. Oliver focused on repairing the damage done to his personal and professional life. He returned to work, determined to rebuild his reputation and regain the trust of his colleagues and patients. The administration, aware of the ordeal he had been through, provided support and resources to help him reintegrate. Oliver took part in peer support groups for medical professionals, sharing his experiences and learning from others who had faced personal crises. This community provided him with a sense of belonging and understanding, helping him to process his trauma. At home, Clara and Oliver continued their therapy sessions. They worked through their issues, addressing the betrayal and the impact of Kyle's harassment. The therapy sessions were emotionally taxing but necessary for rebuilding their relationship. They learned to communicate more openly and honestly, setting boundaries and expressing their needs and fears. Over time, their bond grew stronger, forged in the crucible of shared hardship. They also focused on their son's well-being, ensuring he felt safe and supported. Family therapy sessions helped him articulate his feelings and fears, providing him with tools to cope with the anxiety that had plagued him. Despite the progress, the scars of the past remained. Clara had moments of doubt and fear, particularly when reminders of Kyle surfaced. The psychological impact of the ordeal was profound, affecting her sense of security and trust. Oliver, too, struggled with guilt and regret, often wondering how different their lives might have been if he had made different choices. They both understood that healing was a long-term process, one that required patience and perseverance. They committed to supporting each other, recognizing that their shared experiences had fundamentally changed them. The events that had unfolded left an indelible mark on Oliver's life, shaping his perspectives and priorities in profound ways. He realized the importance of accountability and the far-reaching consequences of his actions. The affair, which had seemed like a momentary lapse in judgment, had spiraled into a devastating series of events that affected not only him, but everyone around him. This realization prompted deep reflection and a commitment to living with greater integrity and transparency. Oliver became an advocate for mental health awareness, particularly within the medical community. He understood firsthand the pressures and stresses that could lead individuals to make poor decisions, and he wanted to ensure that his colleagues had the resources and support they needed. He collaborated with mental health professionals to develop programs and workshops aimed at addressing the unique challenges faced by healthcare workers. His efforts were well received, and he found a new sense of purpose in helping others navigate their own struggles. In his personal life, Oliver focused on being present and attentive to his family's needs. He and Clara made time for regular date nights and family outings, reinforcing the bonds that had been tested by their ordeal. They celebrated small victories and milestones, cherishing the moments of joy and connection that had once seemed out of reach. Their son, gradually returning to his happy, carefree self, was a constant reminder of the resilience and strength of the human spirit. The journey of healing was ongoing, marked by setbacks and breakthroughs. Oliver and Clara continued to face challenges, but they faced them together, armed with the lessons they had learned. They understood the importance of forgiveness, both of each other and themselves. They also recognized the value of professional help, maintaining regular sessions with their therapist to ensure they stayed on track. The experience had taught them the importance of addressing issues head-on rather than allowing them to fester and grow. Oliver's professional life too began to stabilize. He regained the trust of his colleagues and patients, his dedication and skill shining through once more. The support he received from his peers, many of whom had come to admire his resilience and courage, helped him to rebuild his confidence. He continued to contribute to the medical field, not only through his work as a neurosurgeon, but also through his advocacy for mental health and professional support systems. The ordeal with Kyle had left its mark, but it had also forged a new path for Oliver and his family. They emerged from the experience stronger and more united, their relationships deepened by the trials they had faced. The lessons they had learned about trust, accountability, and the importance of mental health would stay with them forever, guiding their actions and decisions in the future. The journey had been arduous, but it had also been transformative, leading them to a place of greater understanding and compassion. Oliver's journey through betrayal, obsession, and redemption is a harrowing tale of how a single mistake can unravel an entire life. His story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of honesty, integrity, and the far-reaching consequences of our actions. Through immense struggle, Oliver and his family learned the value of trust, resilience, and the necessity of mental health support. In the end, Oliver's commitment to rebuilding his life and helping others faced with similar crises showcases the strength of the human spirit. His advocacy for mental health within the medical community and his dedication to his family reflect a profound transformation born from adversity. This tale of redemption and resilience is a testament to the enduring power of love and the possibility of new beginnings. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your friends. Let us know in the comments what you thought of Oliver's journey.